Welcome to Leadership as a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, Chapter 2, the definition. So, why do we have to do the definition first? Well, there's a quote from Socrates that says, the beginning of wisdom lies in the definition of terms. But if you do a couple minutes of research, you'll find out there's questions about whether or not Socrates actually said that, but the statement is true. If you don't understand the vocabulary you're working with, there's a problem. There's another great quote from a guy named Irving Younger, who was a lawyer slash judge. This in the 1960s, I think, was this quote. And he said, "It is the duty of free men to call all things by their right name." So that sounds pretty powerful. Love the quote. However, let's go back to the Bible where God told Adam to go name everything. So ever since the Bible, there's been the instruction to go out and call things by their right names. So, as I talked about in the prelude, a lot of the things I'm going to refer to are not mine. None of this is original thought on my point. I'm just assembling it all so we can look at it differently. So, why does this apply to leadership? Simple. The definition of leadership is insufficient. Let's talk about the definition of the term definition. It is the essential, to describe the essential nature of something. Well, go and look up the definition of leadership and you get one who leads, a leader. Okay, great. The act of leading. All right. Those aren't definitions. Those aren't describing the essential nature of something because you still don't understand what the heck leadership is. So what I'm going to try to do in this next chapter is, or in the instructional portion of this video, is walk through what I think the essential nature of leadership is. And then what we're going to unravel some more is that there's the essential nature of leadership. Then in a different chapter, we're going to talk about the fact that leadership is its own talent. And then when we get to the philosophy section, it will be that the definition combined with the talent, combined with the philosophy, is what makes a leader. So it's not a thing. It's three things that combine together to make it work out. So I please ask you to not immediately discount what I'm saying. I want you to think. Think about what I'm discussing or what I'm trying to describe, because that's, I think, where we've gone wrong. Another quote from Oliver Cromwell from the early 1600s, late 1600s, well, mid 1600s, I think, is when he passed away. But anyway, from the early 1600s, Oliver Cromwell said, "Please assume that you might be wrong." So if we don't have a good definition of leadership, then we need to keep working on it. We need to keep thinking about it. You go and look online too, you'll find the definition of leadership, and it's a page-and-a-half article. So is that the essential nature of something? It's a bunch of descriptions of aspects of leadership. It's the essential nature. So that's the purpose of this video. I'm going to start with the definition because then that definition will be used, and I'll try to demonstrate how I think that that's at least in the right direction, because for me to come up with a unique definition would be ridiculous. It's at least thinking in the right direction for what leadership actually is, as opposed to the way that it's described now. So only one slide, well, actually two slides. I apologize. Try not to do death by PowerPoint. A couple of slides, and then we'll see how that goes. Thanks. Hello, and welcome to the instructional portion of this video. So just real quick on Truth in Lending, I am redoing this entire section of the video because one of the viewers, one of the people that watched this video, sent me a message saying, "Hey, I don't necessarily think that you're using the right word." Felt a little bit like Inigo and Toya. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. So anyway, what I had to do is go back through here, and I'm going to explain where I was incorrect and alter the definition that I proposed for leadership based off of that feedback. And part of that is, if you remember from the introduction, I said you got to have integrity. You got to assume that you're wrong, and you have to make sure that you're precise in your speech, because I think that we've been throwing around too many words for too many times, and they don't necessarily have the meaning that we think, or we're confusing people. So we're just going to hop right into this because I don't want to go too long. So first thing you'll notice is uses of the word leader and leadership. I added this slide. And so we're just going to go through this real quick because this is where things get confusing. So we use leader all the time. Industry leader, lead engineer, leading mathematician, leading economic indicator, thought leader, sales leader, market, lead researcher. Well, realistically, these are not leading people. They're at the top of the competence hierarchy, which is we're going to talk about in chapter 4. So, somebody who's the sales leader is not necessarily a leader of people, but they're great at selling. Great. I mean, cool. So we've got market leader, all that stuff. All those things are people that are at the top of the competence hierarchy, but that doesn't mean that they lead people. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is that we're going to focus on people leaders. Anytime we talk about leadership or leading, it's somebody who's leading people. And then the other part of that is not necessarily a definition, but just a way to think about it is a leader is somebody who you would voluntarily follow to another place or location. And I'll talk about that in later editions of or later videos. But a leader is somebody who you would follow somewhere else even if you weren't compelled to. In other words, of your own volition, you're going to follow somebody. That's the sort of leader that we're talking about, not the person who happens to be in charge. I've said that several times throughout the videos. You'll notice that there's a difference between being in charge and being a leader. So just because you happen to be in a position that somewhat has authority doesn't mean that you're a leader. All right, so I just discussed that. So now we'll go to part of the problems. Remember in the opening we talked about the essential nature of leadership. So here's some definitions from different places. So the capacity to lead, act or instance of leading, the office or position of a leader. Well, as I just said, that doesn't, just because you happen to be in a position doesn't mean that you're actually a leader. There's a whole bunch of examples in recent times that clearly show that just because you have power does not mean that you're a leader. So guidance or direction, or the body of people who lead a group. Okay, I could, that's possibly that, but is that really what a leader, what's the essential nature of what a leader is doing? That's the issue. So this one, so what we start noticing is common is we've got people, we've got a group, and we've got a course of action. Okay, so just pay attention to that one in the future. So this one's kind of a funny, this is more of a quote about leadership, but someone who can persuade people to do what they don't want to do or what they're too lazy to do and like it. Well, I'm not necessarily sure that a leader is persuading all the time. Sometimes it's just providing an environment where you can succeed. All right. So this is interesting. Another thing where what's interesting here, we're talking about an organization, but I'm talking about leading people. So somebody who is defining a vision for some organization might have absolutely no ability to translate to people. It could be somebody that's a massive entrepreneur, somebody who says, here's what I'm trying to set out to do, and can't talk to people at all. They're sort of mutually exclusive. So this one is another aspect of leadership, right? But we're still not talking about the essential nature of what leaders are doing. So if your actions inspire others to dream, learn, do, then you're a leader. Okay. But you can have somebody who is a hero who inspires people, but isn't leading anybody. In other words, they're not in charge of anybody. Nobody's following them. They might do something heroic, and it might say, man, I need to try to be more like that person. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a leader. It means they're a role model, correct? So what is the essential nature of leadership? So if you go and think about it, what are the essential aspects of leading people? Well, you need the people. You need to have an operating environment, because you always have an environment, and then you have a goal. Those three things are in every leadership situation. So what do you have to do? Well, every organization, people, operating environment, and an objective. So then what does the leader do? The leader comes in, finds out what makes the people tick, finds out what the environment is, and then achieves the goal. Well, what's the process? What is it that the leader is doing when they set that up? So the proposed definition that I have is that, is that leaders attune competence and environmental hierarchies in pursuit of a goal. This is the part that I edited. This is where I got called to the carpet. So I used to say that leaders attenuate, but everything that I'm about ready to describe really means attune. And so just for everybody's edification, I didn't want to put another slide up. To tune something means to strengthen it, to make it a stronger or a more coherent tone or sound or activity. Attenuate means to make something weaker or to diminish it. And to attune means to bring things into harmony. So if you look, there's just a difference of two letters, but the meanings are vast. And so the definition that I propose is that anytime you get a leader, a natural leader, not somebody in charge, but a leader, the first thing to do is go and find out who's the best at whatever needs to get done, finds out what the operating environment is, and then brings those two things into harmony in pursuit of a goal. There's a chapter that I did on conductors and music, and really that's what's happening. If you go and listen to something like The Rite of Spring, there's a whole bunch of chaos going on, but it's still an amazing piece of music. Well, that's what a leader does. They take a whole bunch of discordant and different things, and sometimes things that don't make sense, bring them together, set them up so that they can operate the best in the environment or get the environment to be the best for them and achieve the goal. That's what a leader's doing all the time. So this will go in later on when we talk about, well, how do you do that? How are you able to attune things all the time? How do you walk around knowing when things are in disharmony? That will follow in later chapters. So this is what leaders are doing all the time. And if you're doing it using the philosophy, which we'll talk about later as well, that's one of the components of leadership. You have to, this is what a leader does. So think about that. All right, next we'll talk about proposed definition for management. So management definition, once again, I don't think that these talk about the essential nature of management. The conducting, supervising, or something, okay. Judicious use of means to accomplish an end. I guess that means, managing your resources to get something done. Okay, I'll buy that. Person or persons who control or direct a business or other enterprise. Okay. The reason that I'm starting to like this, the more that I think about it, is because this doesn't talk about people. It talks about an enterprise or an organization, which can be its own entity, but realistically, it's a thing. Management is the art of getting things done with formally organized groups. It sort of is leading more towards leadership, if you think about it, because we're talking about groups, goal. We don't really have an environment there. But this is the reason that we're so confused, is we use these things interchangeably. This one is confusing, but it also feeds into the hierarchies chapter, which is number 4. So you've got business that manages managers and manages workers and manages work. So you need to have managers at different levels of the organization But I disagree with that you manage workers. You lead workers. You can manage things, you lead people. Everybody says it, but then we take it out in a situation like this. Management's the art of getting things done through people. That sounds a little bit more like leadership, as we've got people and a goal. The art of knowing what you want to do and then seeing that it's done in the best and cheapest way. So back to managing your resources. I mean, these are great, but this still isn't the essential nature of management. So what is the essential nature of management? Every organization has systems and processes that must be efficiently run to help it run smoothly. Efficiently run. And so that's the essential nature. So you have an equipment manager, you have a sales manager, you have an inventory manager. You have all these sort of things where you're managing inanimate objects or a system or a process. Part of the proposal that I have is we should change it. If you are leading people, your job title should not say manager, because then this is what you think. Oh, I just have to do this and everything's going to be fine. So proposed definition: managers maintain systems in order to sustain an organization, because that's what they do. You need management. You need people to go around and manage things, but you also need a leader to go around and say, great example. Hey, we've got this process. I may have told this story already before. We have a process. The process is A, B, and C, and we're going to get D. And so then you set off to do the process. And you do A, B, and C, and you get F. You do A, B, and C, and you get Q. And then you start getting Q a whole lot. And so what's a manager's first response? Well, we need to do the system harder. We need to do the system more. We need to do this, so you do it more and harder, and you get Q again. Well, the people must be lazy. Blah. Well, what's a leader going to do? A leader comes along and says, hey, is our goal Q? Or is our goal really supposed to be D? Because, we've done everything that we can with this system, and we're still getting Q, which means the system must be broken. Well, a lot of times managers don't want to hear that because they're managing the system. So the leader comes along and says, why don't we figure out why is it that we really want Q, or do we really want D? Because if that's what we want, then we need to make some changes to the system. Or don't change anything and keep getting Q, but stop hollering at people. Stop trying to go crazy, working extra hard to get a result that we're not going to get. That's a leader. Manager goes, it must be step X is not happening correctly. It may be, but sometimes it's not. And so that's what you need a leader for. So as I talked about, in order to make sure that we have integrity with the system and with what I said in the opening section, I was wrong, absolutely, on the use of the word. Everything that I'm describing is attuning. Attenuate's the wrong word, and tune is the wrong word, because if you're going to attune something, think about this. If tuning something is making it stronger and attenuating is making something weaker, well, you may have to do either one of those. You may have to make something stronger to bring it into harmony. You may have to make something weaker to bring it into harmony. You have to take these two things, and through attenuation and tuning, you attune things to make it harmonious. I know it sounds like it's a play on words, but at the end of the day, we got to be precise in our speech, because the whole purpose of this section is definitions. Anyway, appreciate your patience. And for those of you that may have watched this before, I apologize for the mistake, but I 100% appreciate the person that gave me the feedback and said, I think you're using that word wrong. Oh, look who knows so much. Turns out you're only mostly wrong. So I was describing it correctly, but using the wrong word. So, it's the one word that I didn't think I needed to look up when I was doing all this. Anyway, appreciate your time. And next chapter will be the archetype. All right, thank you very much.